Way on or off. I left mine off so far, and we're live. So welcome everybody. My name is Dorie Clark, and you are watching the very first episode of a brand new project, which is a collaboration between myself and Molly Youngblood Geiger, who is here. And this show is Social Goodwill for Business. So you can find us at the hashtag #SoGoodForBiz, and we'll be happy to. This show will be like a platform of education for entrepreneurs, and what we want to share is good ideas and good passions and good people that really need more of a platform that we want to share and spread, kind of like the TEDx ideas. Maybe I'm getting even more ideas as we talk. But I'm really excited. Everyone that is watching us live, thank you for tuning in and watching us. And I'm super excited because it's been a long time since I've done a Hangout on Air like this. The first show started off as Sparkle SOS Book Authors and Publishers, and now we're evolving. So we have a panel of guests here today, or we have a guest here today, and we have our featured guest, Dorie Clark. So where I'll start is just with introducing myself. My name is Dorie Clark, and I am the owner of Social Sparkle and Shine, which is a thought leadership and digital authority agency, and I help entrepreneurs and small business owners find and create the platform that they deserve and that they know that they're working towards. My partner with the show is Molly Youngblood Geiger, and if you could just introduce yourself really briefly.
Sure, yes. My name is Molly Youngblood Geiger, Design Right For You out of Jacksonville, Florida. I'm active on Google Plus in the Google Partners community, where I'm an ambassador, in the Google Small Business community, where I'm an advisor, and I am a Google Rising Star.
Awesome, thanks so much. And a longtime friend of mine, Vicki, please introduce yourself.
Wow, and I have to follow Molly? My name is Vicki Connelly. I am in Windsor, Colorado, and I am in the process of rebranding myself as the Hangout Coach, teaching basic Hangouts to local businesses and brands. And I thank you for inviting me on the show. This is one of my first Hangouts, public Hangouts, in a long time.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you're here with us, and you know, maybe later on in the show you can bring up some of the projects that you're working on. I know that you work on some really interesting stuff there in Colorado, and it might be interesting to bring it up in the conversation. So welcome. Thank you for that, Vicki. Welcome, Dorie. I'm so glad that you're here. It's such a pleasure always to have you back on the show, and the reason why I'm so excited always to talk to you is because you bring these fresh ideas, and it's kind of like you present an idea, and then I start seeing it all over the place. So as we're preparing for this very conversation, one of the main things that came to me after finishing reading your book, Stand Out, How to Find Your Breakthrough Idea and Build a Following Around It, the main idea that came to me was, you know what, I know the first thing that half of my friends are going to say when I present this to them and say, you should find your breakthrough idea and build a following around it. They're going to say, I have no idea how to do that. And then, of course, the next thing I saw this morning as I'm preparing, I look at a link came across my feed, and it was an article. I think it was in Entrepreneur. And so I clicked through it because it was, of course, what to do when you have too many passions. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But it was, of course, an article from you. So I was like, you know, things come at all the right times. So please introduce yourself, Dorie, and tell the audience a little bit about your book and where you know, what you want to tell us about today.
Yeah, Debbie, thank you very much for having me. So I am coming to you live from Seattle, Washington. I'm in the midst of my book tour because Stand Out just came out about a little less than 2 weeks ago. So I'm touring around to a variety of different cities to try to get the word out about it. And the basic goal of Stand Out, I first met you, in fact. I was on the show about 2 years ago now with my first book, Reinventing You. And I really see this as a continuation in a lot of ways, because Reinventing You was a book for people who are making some kind of change in their professional life, whether it's that they want to change jobs or change careers or change how they are perceived by other people. But once you get there, once you sort of solve that problem, once you have made that transition, you have a new challenge, which is when you have found the place you really want to make your mark, how do you then go about doing it? Especially because this is an era where, as many people are aware and seeing every day, it is increasingly hard to get noticed because we have just such a profusion of information coming at us. We have tweets, we have Facebook posts, we have emails, everyone's drowning in it. How do you actually break through that noise and really have your true talents recognized and heard? And so that's why I wanted to write Stand Out. I interviewed about 50 top thought leaders in fields ranging from business to technology to science to real estate to try to understand what made them different, what made them be able to be successful, and tried to really break it down so that regular professionals could follow those same principles.
Awesome. So, I mean, there's so much to it, though, right? Like it seems overwhelming for a lot of people. Do you think that? Do you think? Tell me this. Let's start with this. Could you define? How would you qualify or define a breakthrough idea?
Sure. So, when we're talking about a breakthrough idea, I mean, essentially what I discovered about almost all the thought leaders that I interviewed was that in most cases, there is some very particular thing that they are known for, right? If you are if you are well known in your field, it's usually because you had a particular idea or concept that you were associated with. We're not talking about celebrities that are famous for being famous. We're talking about what I imagine most professionals aspire to, which is to be recognized as a serious person and a serious professional. And so if that's the case, it's not about who's on Jersey Shore. It's about what are your ideas. And so we think about people who are well known. So David Allen, for instance, who's someone that I profiled in the book, the famous productivity expert, he wrote a book which really just kind of lays out his system. It's known as Getting Things Done, and that's what he's most famous for. I mean, he's certainly talked about a lot of things or done a lot of things, but really, he is Mr. Getting Things Done. When we think about influence and persuasion, Robert Cialdini, who's an eminent psychologist, that's what he's known for, is really codifying the principles around influence and persuasion. So when we think about a breakthrough idea, fundamentally, you don't have to be the world expert in something, but it means within your company or within your community, within your field, what's the thing you're known for?
Right. So even if you have a relatively small community or list of contacts or people that you're regularly in front of, then you would still have the opportunity perhaps to become a thought leader in front of that particular group.
Yeah, absolutely. The distinction that I make in the book is between what I'll call a global expert, where you're like one of the handful of top people in the universe, which is a great thing to aspire to. I mean, why not, right? But not all of us are going to get there. That's fine. But what I think everyone can and should do is aspire to be a local expert, meaning within your community, however you define your community, what are you the best at? If you can really make that case, and if other people grasp it, that is going to be enormously valuable to you, because it gives people a reason to seek you out specifically and want to do business with you.
Right. Dorie, Molly or Vicki, anything you want to jump in with?
Yeah, great stuff. I totally agree. I know for myself that's kind of where I started out in regards to Google. A couple of 3 years ago, I was a part of the Google Engage program, and I went in and just started sharing my expertise within those communities. And then from there, my status just kept growing and growing. So I totally agree with what Dorie's saying. Excellent advice.
Oh yeah, I'm busy scrambling, taking notes. I love how you worded that. Aspire to be a local expert in however you define your community. in getting the word out about Google Hangouts. That's the thought I try to get it across. So I'm definitely going to steal that if you don't mind.
Hey, absolutely. That's great.
All right.
Steal and give credit.
That's right. That's right. I will give credit.
Yeah. One of the things that still challenges people, though, with that thought leadership is a lot of people feel like they want to make a change, like that big change in their life and in their career, and that they want to cut ties with their past. They want to move on and like be done with it, for Christ's sake. Sorry if anyone was offended by me swearing. But really, I think I often recommend to people, like people come to me and say, how do I get into being a social media marketer? I come from a design background, I come from an architecture background, I come from whatever sort of background. And I always think the easiest way, and what I did when I was first getting started in business, which to me was the easiest way to pitch people and to develop a following and a client base, was to go back to that same group of people that already knew me as an expert and relied on me in particular ways and said, okay, I'm not here to talk about that anymore, but I've got something that that I know for you will be really important because I understand your business like nobody else does.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, ultimately, when we're talking about establishing expertise, this is actually a subject that I talked about a lot in my first book, Reinventing You, is how do you make the transition into the new area of expertise. So I have a couple of thoughts about that. I mean, one is that for people who want to completely leave behind and forsake their past, I mean, certainly you can do that if you want, but oftentimes I would argue that may be a mistake because you are going to have a sort of special sauce to bring, and a big part of it is whatever past experience you've already had. You might, say, okay, I want to be a yogi. I want to open my own yoga studio. I used to be a lawyer. I hated it. I don't want to do that anymore. But, the truth is, you could just, pretend you weren't a lawyer, but I actually would argue that you probably would be more effective if you own that and say, you know what, I'm going to start. I mean, of course, the classes are open to anyone, but I might have a special class for yoga for lawyers because they really need stress relief. Or I'm going to start positioning myself and talking from my own experience about someone who has been a really harried, frenzied, white-collar professional and talk about why something that might seem as frou-frou as yoga is particularly valuable to this group of people because I can speak with authority, whereas someone who has just been bumming around India for 10 years might know a lot of other good stuff, but they don't really know what it's like to be a lawyer and work 100 hours a week. So owning that experience and bringing it to bear in your new profession or your new area of expertise can actually make you an even better spokesman.
Yeah, it reminds me, it forces me to remember that with every experience I've had in my career, with that time that I put in, I'm walking away from it with the giant bag of loot over my shoulder. Right? Like, it might not be money in my bank account, but I've got valuable experiences in my past, and I want to bring them with me. That's the value. Yeah,
that's a great metaphor. I love that.
I've got more. So do we want to get into some questions then? Molly or Vicki, did you guys have any that you wanted to jump in with?
Yeah, I'll jump in. One of the questions that I'm interested to know is what was it that inspired you to write the book, Dorie? Was it something that happened in real life, or was it just past experiences? What was the one thing that made you decide to write Stand Out?
Yeah, so I really wanted to write it largely because I wanted essentially to solve my own problem. I wanted to really be ideally a prominent business author and thinker, and I wanted to figure out how to do it. I wanted to figure out how I could learn from the experiences of the best people in the industry. And so I thought, well, writing a book. I mean, this, if it's interesting to me, probably there are other people out there as well that would find this of interest. How do you become a standout in your field? And I thought it would be great to have the opportunity to speak with a lot of people who are, you could say intellectual heroes in the field that I work in, like Seth Godin or Daniel Pink or David Allen or Tom Peters, and to get to hear their insights and to hear the inside story, which I think so rarely gets told, about what that moment was like when they crossed over from being, just a regular guy that no one's heard of to being a celebrity, at least within the field. I mean, probably, people aren't going to be mobbing Tom Peters on the street, but most people in the business world have probably heard of Tom Peters, and that's powerful. But you hear about these people, and it's almost like the way that the news stories go. It seems like they've always been famous, and of course they haven't. They came from somewhere, they emerged from somewhere, and so I wanted to understand exactly what that part of the process looked like.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, was it easy to reach out to these people? Was it easy to get in touch with them? Did you use connections, or how did you find your celebrities?
Yeah, it actually was much easier than you might imagine to get in touch with them. I was impressed at their level of accessibility. And, I know this is something that Debbie has talked about as well with her author series that she did on Google Plus Hangouts. But yeah, in some cases, we had a little bit of a warm connection. Tom Peters and I had traded some messages on Twitter, so I think he kind of knew who I was. Daniel Pink and I had interviewed him previously for a blog that I had done, so we knew each other a little bit. But they were very friendly. They were very willing to do it. The interesting kind of quirky thing that I will note is that these guys who were really like A-level players in the business field, they did not hesitate. Right away I heard back, yes, sure, let's set it up, let's do it. The B-level players, people who are, I would say, demonstrably less famous than these guys, those are the ones who gave me problems. They're like, oh, I don't know, I'm a little busy. I'm working on my book, so I couldn't possibly, do something different than, I couldn't possibly take 30 minutes to talk to you for your book. And it was very funny, actually, that I think it maybe tells us something, that the folks who are the most gracious are the ones who have in fact risen to the highest levels.
I love that. That's very interesting.
I tend to agree. I think that's a great point, is that how you carry yourself on the way there, it helps determine that end result of where you get to. Yeah, and I don't really think I'm anywhere, but I would not be here where I am today, which is significantly further than I was 3 years ago. I wouldn't be here without the viewers, and without you, Dorie, and without Molly, and without Vicki, right? Like, everyone who's participated in my Hangouts have contributed to my confidence and my connections and to my success, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I want to bring up, I think you said earlier, Dorie, that it's even increasingly harder to get noticed. And one thing I want to ask you about or bring up, because I have a sort of belief that it's even easier now than ever to actually break through, to break through the crowds and to stand out, because there's so many more people. Because there's more competition, there's more of the fray. And there's more of the junk, and there's more of the people who aren't putting in any effort, but they're trying to get the same stuff. And so whenever I do put in effort into something, it's actually surprisingly easy, because I think what most people do is they really listen to the rules and they stop way short of where the rules are laid out for the entire population. They stop so short, and for me, I'm like, well, let's see if I can just push through a little bit further, past all of the competition.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a worthy theory, absolutely. And you know, to a certain extent, I mean, both extremes are true, right? I mean, in the past, like let's say we go back in time 20 years ago. So there were fewer channels without the internet. I mean, you know, literally, there were fewer channels, like there were television channels. That was kind of the only way you could reach a mass audience. And so it was very, very hard because everyone was basically knocking on the door of television executives saying, hey, will you give me a show? Hey, can I get on the Today Show? Hey, can I get on the Tonight Show? Yeah. And it was incredibly hard and brutal to get there. But if you were picked, if you were chosen, then everyone would know who you are, because it's like, oh wow, well everyone's watching Johnny Carson, so clearly everyone's going to see your comedy act. And that, you know, that was pretty easy. I mean, it was hard to get there, but we all understood what the process was. Yeah. Then there's this massive splintering, and so all of a sudden you have like 1 million people, and 1 million people all want to, you know, create their own thing, and they're filming their own comedy channels, and they're putting it up online and whatever. And so we get this situation where it is very hard for someone who's a regular person, who's not like a comedy scout or something, to separate the wheat from the chaff, because they don't have 25 hours to go through and watch all the clips and see who's good and see who's not good. Mostly what happens is they tune it out and they don't pay attention to anything. Or then maybe they'll go to their friend and be like, Debbie, what's good? Okay, I'll watch what Debbie says. That's it. So it's a little bit of a different challenge. I mean, it's great that we have the level playing field, that at least we now have the potential to be discovered, because before you could just have one jerky guy be like, no, I don't like the way you look, and then your chances were, you know, scattered forever. Whereas now you can at least put it out there. But it's the sort of spreading, it's the dissemination that becomes harder. And so it's true, however, that a lot of people, you know, they do put out crappy stuff. You know, I mean, if you read most, I tell people a lot, you know, in my new book, Stand Out, I talk about, you know, how it's great to blog. It's great to, you know, and now it's really easy. You can blog on LinkedIn, you can put it up there. And most people, I read their blogs and they're like 200 words, and, you know, they're just full of these ridiculous generalities. Have you ever felt blah, blah, blah? Well, I have, and here's what I did. And, you know, it's like, why are you even bothering? It's terrible. But so if you do actually create something that's valuable, that has a lot of information, a lot of insight, a lot of content, it will be shared disproportionately. So that's definitely true. But you do have to sort of surmount that hurdle of people just tuning out in general because they've seen too much crap.
Yeah. And not everything that you produce can be brilliant, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I like to believe that everything I produce is phenomenal, but
yeah.
So let's talk about the building the platform then. So I think you might have seen, or you might not have actually seen, my book review of Stand Out on the Amazon.ca.
I did see that. Thank you.
I thought it was striking to me how I'm finally reading Think and Grow Rich after 20 years of it sitting on my bookshelf, and how much Stand Out reflects that. It seems like a modern day Think and Grow Rich to me. And I have definitely said, and my way overdue book review for both Stand Out and Reinventing You is going to put both of those books on summer reading lists. Especially for high school students and for college people who are, you know, college kids who are getting into their career, that I just think it would be one of the most powerful things to put in their hands for the summer. You know, who knows what else they'll do. So what do you think is, like, you know, people are so overwhelmed by social media and all of the opportunities that are available there, and we have to do Facebook and now funnels and webinars, and is there one thing that seems to consistently work amongst everyone that you spoke to?
Well, you know, I mean, the people have different things that they are maybe more inclined to do. Some people are more comfortable writing than others, you know. And for me, I used to be a journalist, so it's not a big stretch for me to write a blog post or even to write a book because I'm comfortable with that. Some people just hate writing and feel like it's torture. And so in those cases, I would never want to put a one-size-fits-all prescription because you can, like, you know, a Gary Vaynerchuk, create a successful platform for yourself with video, and that's totally a legitimate choice. It's about content. It's not about how the content appears. Right. All that being said, what I think is the most important thing, actually, it's not a form of social media at all, although social media can fuel it, is your email list. I think that is something that people forget about. They don't prioritize. But if you really want to build a platform that is impressive to publishers and is meaningful for you, you need to have your audience, and you're not going to get your audience based on, you know, however many Twitter followers or, you know, Google Plus Circle-y people that you have. Those are relationships that are controlled by other outside entities that can change the rules of engagement whenever they would like. It's a lot better to have a direct link to your customers and your fans.
So it feels like it's more secure when you have the email list. It's got better value to publishers and to anyone who would want to invest in your business or your idea to have an email list versus a Twitter following. Is it in part because people on Twitter are following 20 million other people at the same time?
For sure, yeah. I mean, your chance of seeing any given tweet from somebody that you follow is really minuscule when it comes down to it. I mean, in all honesty, most publishers, I don't think, know very much about marketing, and so I don't think they fully would grasp the implication of having a big email list versus having a big Twitter following. I may be doing them a disservice, but that is my strong suspicion that they would probably be equally impressed by either. Mm-hmm. I mean, certainly they look at big numbers and they say, yeah, that's good. But if I was weighing it as a marketer, as a professional marketer, I would say there's 10 times or 100 times the value in having an opt-in email list as compared to having a Twitter following, because the Twitter following can just disappear. It can disappear because people are flaky. It can disappear because you know, Twitter decides they want to jack up their revenues, and so they're not going to show anyone anything you do unless you give them a ransom, otherwise known as paid advertising fees. So, you know, and if you have an email list, it's just a way that you can keep in good contact and make very sure that people will see your stuff. I mean, the average open rate for an email, it's maybe 30%. That's not amazing compared to, like, you know, like you'd hope that it would be 100%, but 30% compared to your chance of seeing a tweet or a Facebook post, I mean, which is at best like maybe 2%. I mean, geez, yeah. That is just exponential.
Yeah, 30% is significantly more powerful than you could get with pretty much any other media. Even purchase media doesn't get 30% coverage of the marketplace. So yeah, I think that's a really strong reminder, something that I'm getting more into as well myself, especially this year. I'm really looking at, you know, why in the past have I taken the steps that are the exact step I advise my clients not to do myself. You know, like just focus on one thing and don't worry about the other elements. And email has always been, for me personally, email has always been a bearer of bad news. So I have a bit of a personal, like, psychological thing in the back of my brain that says email delivers bad news. People don't like emails. I don't like getting emails. I get nervous when I see them sometimes. And so
you just need better subject lines, Debbie. You need, like, you know, look at these kittens or something like that, you know. Okay. Then people will be like, wow, okay, yeah.
Yeah, these kittens that are thought leaders.
That's right, exactly.
Perfect.
You know, I think one thing that I'll just throw in that I think is important and has been valuable, I was not organized enough to do this with the launch of my first book, Reinventing You, but with Stand Out, one thing that I laid out in advance that has actually proven to be enormously helpful. Literally, my launch week, I gained more than 1,000 new email subscribers as a result of this. Was just in a week, was I created in advance of the launch a 42-page workbook that was an adaptation of Standout, and that's something that I'm giving away for free on my website as, essentially just a way that people can try out the ideas and work through it themselves. There's 139 questions, and people can download it and, ask themselves the questions and work through it in the workbook format so that they can, come up with their own breakthrough idea and build a following around it. And so that's something where people on my website, DorieClark.com, DorieClark, they can go to it, they plug in their email address, and boom, they get it. And I found that that's powerful because it's giving them a reason to want to subscribe. If you're just like, hey, subscribe to my email list, which I did for a while, that's nice. And if someone's like, they love your stuff, of course they're going to do it. But for most people, they're like, well, I already get a lot of emails, so why do I need more? What am I going to get out of this? So you have to be really clear about what the benefit is so that they can say, oh, actually, that's a really cool thing. And if I'm going to get more stuff like that, then yeah, that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Good point. Molly or Vicki, do either one of you want to jump in? Did we have any questions on the Q&A either?
I've been checking. I haven't seen any as of yet, but I would actually add to what Dorie said, that I totally agree with what you're saying. It's really nice when a user visits your website and they want to opt in and they feel like they're getting something instead of just signing up for an email list. I think that's definitely a better incentive, and it's actually one of the strategies I've implemented for some of my clients, and I can say it's working. So I think that's a great idea. And to add to what you were talking about in regards to marketing, I totally agree with the email marketing. It's very, very powerful. But I would add to that mobile marketing. It's something that's very, very, it's been in the news lately. So text marketing, and even social media marketing. It really, I think, as a marketer, it's important to cover all your bases to kind of, give your entire audience, give them the choice on how they want to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would never say like abandon social media, it's not useful, but I think it's important to understand where it fits in, that it's not the be all and end all.
It's such a noisy world out there nowadays too. I mean, everybody has things coming at them, social media, newspaper, TV, phone. I mean, life in general just gets in the way a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to just point out how much I really like that you have that workbook, that I saw that workbook on your website, Dorie, because it really is you walking the talk. You are the example of what you suggest, excuse me, within Standout in taking that one breakthrough idea of Standout, the book, the object, and then repurposing the content in other ways that your audience can engage with. I think that's really powerful.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So, other questions? No. Okay. So sorry, go ahead. You go.
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm reading through the book. I noticed that Debbie was actually featured in your book as one of your case studies. So I just thought if we could just quickly touch upon that really quick, maybe what inspired you to use Debbie as a case study in your book.
What a good layup question. I like that, Molly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, it's true. It's true. Ms. Debbie Horvat was a case study in Standout, and part of the reason that I wanted to include her is that, as I discussed in the book, when it comes to really building the following around your ideas, it's a 3-step process. The first step is building your network, so that you have kind of a smaller but like one-to-one relationships with the people that you need to have relationships with in order to get your idea advanced. The second step is building your audience, which is the more typical marketing things that you might do, blogging or doing hangouts like this, or just sharing your ideas in general. And then it's about spreading your idea so that you're enabling people in your audience to become part of a community around your idea. They're having conversations amongst themselves with it. And so, one of the challenges that I address in the book is that, all of us currently have a network of some sort. We have people we know, etc., but they may not be the right people. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with them, but particularly if you're pivoting in some way or you want to really make a play where you're trying to go big, you just may not necessarily know the people who are the people who can help you get there. You need to introduce yourself to new contacts, but that can be hard to do that. I mean, they're busy, they're popular, they've got a lot of people coming at them. So what's your strategy for doing that? How do you get on their radar so that you're not just one more supplicant being like, hey, can I buy you a coffee? And they're like, oh God, not another. So you have to do something different. And so one of the strategies that Debbie used, which I think is very powerful and very effective, is, so number one, don't just, oh, can I pick your brain? That is fundamentally an extractive process. That is you just saying like, hey, I know you get money for this, but can you actually do it for me for free? And it's like so annoying.
Yeah.
So you don't want to just ask, and even if it's like, oh, I'll buy you coffee, it's like, oh, well, thank you for that $4, but actually,
my rate is a little bit higher than that.
Right. So people talk a lot about this concept of leading with value. How do you give something to someone? But I think a lot of people get confused about what exactly that means. But a really good way to lead with value is to say, can I interview you? Because that means, essentially, I mean, it's a win-win, because you get to have the coffee, you get to pick their brain, you get to ask them whatever question you want and sort of have a captive audience. But you are doing it for a broader audience, and you're exposing them to the general public. If you're doing it on a Google Plus Hangout, that gets recorded, that gets uploaded to the web. And so it's not just this one-on-one thing like, oh gosh, Debbie has now monopolized an hour of my time, someone might be saying. It's Debbie has given me an opportunity to share my insights with her community and with the world. And so you look at that not as somebody trying to get something from you, you look at that as somebody helping you spread your message. So it becomes a favor that they're doing for you. And so that really puts people at a different, on a different plane. It's a different relationship. And you can have a more peer-to-peer relationship and meet some great people and make some connections. And so Debbie did that, I think, very well with her series. And, she met a lot of cool authors. And, as I recount in the book, Mike Michalowicz, who she met, mentioned her in a book. I've now mentioned her in a book. So she's getting all famous-like and, has really done it well.
Thank you for talking about that and for sharing the process. I think you described it perfectly. It's probably exactly what I told you. But you totally get it. Whoever it is that I want to talk to, I've pre-qualified them and I've pre-identified them as someone that I want on my show. And then I go on a hunt through all of their social channels and through their blogs and everything that they're producing, and I'm looking for what are they trying to achieve. And then I see, how can I help them achieve that through what I'm asking them to participate in, so that what I'm offering them is help through a totally new medium and something that might give them some new ideas, rather than asking them for anything. I don't like to ask people for anything, especially if I'm not sure that, if I'm not really confident that they're going to say yes. I hate the rejection. I'm actually a really shy person. So,
yeah.
I like to get a feel for someone, and I always, and this is something important that I do want to share with people, is when I've identified someone, like I did with Dorie, and I don't know how much I shared this story with you, Dorie, but I actually did identify you because I was preparing for the Hangoutsonair with Guy Kawasaki, and I found you on the speaking panel with him at, I think it was the something in Las Vegas early in 2013. You were
Yep.
on the same panel, and even the Winklevoss twins were there. There were like hundreds of people, and so I was, clicking through the speakers. Like, I know Guy Kawasaki's going to be there, so let me find some other people that are interesting to me. And through clicking through your speaker profile there, which is an interesting way, you also say, start speaking and write a book and all of that stuff. Through there, I ended up on your website and saw you were coming out with your book, and I went, oh, well, this is perfect then. Now I have to have her on my show.
That's right. That's fantastic.
And that was that was really how it started. It's been an interesting process since then. It's been more than 2 years. One of the things that you touched on in the book, though, that I wanted to also talk about was the resistance that people sometimes face when they're trying to get their breakthrough idea to break through.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's interesting because we would like, of course, in our heroic narratives to to have this idea, and the hard part is coming up with the idea, and once everyone hears it, they're just like, oh, that's amazing, yes, let's do that. But that is often the start of the struggle rather than the conclusion of the struggle, because you have to come up with it, and then you have to market it. You have to get other people to buy into it. There can be a lot of resistance up front. Sometimes because people, they're a little threatened if the status quo is threatened. And so one example that I give, I profile a guy, he's actually a former consulting client of mine named Eric Schott, and he was and is a scientist who now is one of the most respected scientists in the world. He's been cited many, many times. He's written more than 200 peer-reviewed papers on everything from Alzheimer's to diabetes, and he's really made a mark. But in the early days of his professional life, he was extremely controversial because he was one of the first scientists to use big data to inform his findings. And a lot of biologists look at that and said, this is ridiculous. This isn't how biology is done. Why are we, you don't even have a hypothesis that you're testing. You're just like taking a bunch of numbers and being like, hey, what happens here? And they really thought it was unscientific. They thought that it was not going to be helpful. And so they resisted it and they pushed back on it. Eric told me about an example, and I cite this in the book, that when he was lecturing at Columbia a few years ago, a tenured professor, one of the sort of dons of the department, literally got up in the middle of his speech and started yelling him down and stormed out of it and said, I'm not going to listen to this guy. No one should listen to this guy. And that's the kind of response that you can get. I mean, oftentimes it's not quite that vivid or quite that visceral of having people scream at you when you're giving a talk, but nonetheless, you get variations of that. And the reason Eric said, and I think this is the case for a lot of fields, is that look, if you're coming up with something genuinely new, it is threatening to how people have done business. It means that their ideas might be considered a little bit old-fashioned, and they're not maybe going to get the research dollars anymore. They're not maybe going to get the attention anymore, and so it becomes a little bit of a pitched battle where they are more interested in preserving their status than they are in which idea is actually going to be more helpful. So you have to be prepared for that, and that can take a little bit of internal. It calls upon a kind of internal reserve that you need to have. I start out the book with a woman named Diane Mulcahy who works for the Kauffman Foundation, which focuses on entrepreneurship, and she did a very controversial study talking about the state of the venture capital industry, and essentially about how venture capital is broken and all the ways that they're sort of screwing up and wasting people's money. This was clearly not popular. Diane used to work in venture capital, and all of her former colleagues are like, oh my God, you're committing suicide here. But she thought it was really important for the truth to come out about that. So she risked a lot of repercussions, but she put the idea first, not putting herself first. And I think that we are called upon to have that level of courage sometimes if we really want our ideas to succeed.
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to be willing to put your ideas out there in order for them to gain a platform. in order
Yes.
for them to gain an audience, for them to break through. But as you're talking about it, you know, something that it's really starting to make sense to me in my mind, or a new perspective on it, is that when you suddenly appear at the top, you know, shaking the vine, everyone who has been climbing the vine and finding their footholds gets a little bit nervous, because how did you suddenly end up at the top of the vine? Is what it looks like. And it does look like, to them it can look like, you know, everything that I've done so far to get here, she's saying or he's saying is wrong, or is no longer relevant, or you know, I'm old-fashioned. So it makes some sense.
Yeah, no one wants to have the rug pulled out from under them. It's a bad feeling for sure.
Yeah, I just have to have more compassion for the people who are screaming at me that I have no sense and no place doing Hangouts on air, which I don't mind. I have some Hangouts that are good, some Hangouts that are bad. I learn from every single Hangout. And what I learn more than anything from everything is the more I prepare, the better results I get.
There we go. That's awesome.
It always comes down to focus for me. So what else would you like to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I think we're covering a lot of really good material. I mean, you know, maybe I'll share a couple of stories about strategies that people have used to develop their breakthrough ideas. One element, you know, so when we go back to this early stage of how do you find this idea, how do you come up with it, which I go into in depth in the first half of Standout, is many people think that, oh, they just have to be hit with this idea, that it's going to be this like overnight thing where all of a sudden they wake up and it clicks and they have this idea. But the truth is, for many people, it is something that evolves over time. It is something that, it's not like one flash of insight. It's something that they kind of begin to sniff at, and then it just builds. And Stephen Johnson, who's a science writer, he calls this the power of the slow hunch. And so there's different ways that you can harness this, but one of the most important ways is to just really immerse yourself in the field so that you are able to see what are the questions that people aren't asking, what are the holes that have come up, and you don't learn this from just staring at it from 30,000 feet. You learn this by being in the trenches and experimenting. Mm-hmm. And so I actually tell the story of a guy named Michael Waxenberg in Standout, and Michael is, he was and is an IT manager for a financial services company, but he developed this very lucrative second business for himself because his family was trying to decide if they should buy their apartment, which was going to be condoized. And so he started going to all these open houses, and unlike everybody else, this goes to your point, Debbie, about how do you sort of become a little bit exceptional with what you're doing when everybody else is doing just crappy work. Everybody else, they either wouldn't do anything about it, or there was a website called Street Easy where people would capture their impressions about these residences that they would visit. And so people would write these really half-hearted, not useful reviews. But Michael, more than anything else, to just keep track of the properties he was looking at, he would write very, very, very detailed property reviews on the site.
Yeah. Which
people began to look at and say, oh my gosh, this is so detailed, this is such a great resource, I love this. And so he started getting pings from people on the website saying, you're brilliant, will you represent me, will you be my realtor? And of course the problem was he wasn't a realtor. And so, at first he would kind of offer them advice, but, he couldn't get any money for it. They'd give him like a box of chocolates or something. But before too long, an actual realtor noticed him because he had made himself stand out so much with his contribution. And the realtor said, look, if you have not taken the test yet, I will sponsor you. You can come to work for me. You already have a client list. And so Michael went through, he got his real estate license, and now he has a second job that he's very happy with. He doesn't have to market it at all. He doesn't have to worry about getting clients. The clients come to him based on the reviews that he's done on his the Street Easy website, and then the second generation referrals. So if you really want to build like a dream business, a business that doesn't even require any marketing, just diving in and creating original research, whether it's reviews of things, case studies, interviewing people, writing articles, doing a white paper, doing, if you're a quantitative person, you could do a quantitative analysis, doing a survey. Any of these things are really interesting ways to immerse yourself in the content directly. This is about primary research, not about this kind of secondary, like, oh, here's what I think about what so-and-so thinks about blah, blah, blah. We have too much of that on the internet. But if you can do primary research of some sort, that is enormously valuable, and that's one of the sort of hacks that I suggest in Stand Out, so that people can begin to, to really come up with what their ideas are.
Awesome suggestion. I strongly agree about primary research and getting in and getting your hands dirty and figuring out where are the holes, what are people tripping up on, and can I find a solution for it? That's kind of what I like about Hangouts, in that Google isn't great at explaining to people how to use Hangouts, for every industry, from every perspective. And so I feel like I've taken on that charge of saying, at least for people within the advertising industry and for ad agencies and for marketing professionals who are working with big brands, when they're in this situation of, we spend $250,000 on social media a year as it is, what's our new fancy shiny thing this year that we're going to apply for awards with? I want to find those solutions for that particular industry. So I really, primary research is exceptionally valuable, but you're giving me even a further thinking of, how do I really research, probably Hangouts would be the valuable subject matter for me to do a survey or research on, and then publish that sort of content.
Absolutely.
And if you're doing something that you love, it comes easy. So find something you love, find something you like doing, and it's so easy. Just figure out a way to get paid for it.
It's true. I mean, Nate Silver, a lot of people know who he is now. He's, he very famously predicted the outcome of the U.S. presidential election, and it was very well known for his statistical analyses, and wrote a best-selling book, all of that. But the way that he got his start, literally, he wasn't a professional statistician. He was a college economics major. That was really all the training he had. He had taken, probably a handful of courses, but he was not an expert at all in terms of statistical analyses. But he taught himself enough. He taught himself what he needed to know. His first gambit was creating what he called the burrito bracket, which was he created a showdown in Chicago. He wanted to find the best burrito in Chicago, and so he created a website called the Burrito Bracket to track burrito against burrito competition, because that's what he loved. And then the second thing that he did was he applied it to baseball, which he also loved. And he ultimately created a business which he sold, and sort of began to get his name out there based on that. But he went from burritos to baseball to presidential politics.
Right. So it's not an overnight success story. Building thought leadership, getting your standout idea.
That's right. And even more importantly, he taught himself what he needed to know. He taught himself by experimenting.
Right. And what do you say to the people, and we've discussed this a couple of times before, but what do you say to those people who are like, I have a bunch of really good ideas, and I don't want to launch, I don't want to put the effort in unless I know that it's the right one, like I don't want to screw it up. So, they're waiting for the universe to be in the right spot.
Right. And so, to a certain extent, there's nothing wrong with waiting for the universe to tell you. But if you're not doing anything, if you're literally like paralyzed, then the universe is not going to tell you anything because the universe doesn't have any data. What I suggest in general, and I suggested it in the entrepreneur post that you mentioned today, Debbie, that just came out, what to do when you have too many passions. For folks who are interested, I have more than 400 free articles on my website, DorieClark.com. So there's a lot of articles about, from Entrepreneur and Forbes and Harvard Business Review that I've done that they can check out. But what I suggest there is basically take little bets. Do small things and then try and do them in, you have 10 passions. Okay, great. Make small bets in 10 different things, but then see what gets traction. Mm-hmm. Of course, you don't want to spend, your life savings on one idea and, oh no, it's the wrong idea. But there's no reason at all you can't write 10 blog posts and just see which one gets shared, because there's a power law distribution, and it's very likely that 8 of them will be shared 10 times, and 2 of them will be shared 100 or 1,000 times. You want to just do enough of an experiment to see what seems to be sticking, and then you can put your efforts behind that.
Molly, do you want to jump in with your comment?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment about that. That was actually my experience with Google Hangoutsonair. I met Debbie last August when I started doing research on how to host a Google Hangout on Air, and had the awesome opportunity to attend and be her co-host on the Forbes.com interview, and that was an awesome experience. But after that, I decided I really needed to start practicing. I just didn't have those skills honed, and so I decided what I was going to do is just pick a variety of different topics, just like you mentioned, Dorie. You may have one thing in particular that's your passion, but you're not quite sure that is going to be popular to the public in general. So I decided, well, I'll do a variety of different Hangouts, so I just see what happens. And it turned out some of the Hangouts that I didn't think were going to be very popular wound up being extremely popular, and some of the Hangouts that I thought were going to be wildly popular, didn't really get the results I want. So I totally agree. It's just about getting out there, experimenting, and seeing what kind of results you can get. So definitely great advice.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing your perspective.
Yeah, and Google research. Just Google research alone, that's what brings things into your universe. So you gotta seek to find.
Yeah, there's that. I think if for people who have that sort of struggle, what I like to tell people is really, prioritize like 4 or 5 ideas, and then don't prioritize 4 or 5 ideas that you might want to start with for your test. Don't take your big idea and the number one big passion. If you're worried about falling flat on your face when you get started, don't take the big important one for your start. Build up those skills, like you're saying, Dorie. Bet on 10 different things, and it's like almost like betting on yourself, or like testing yourself and saying, okay, if I want to be a media mogul, which includes being a book author and being a speaker and having a successful Hangout on Air show and publishing magazines and doing all of these things that I've always dreamed about, there are some skills that I'm going to need to acquire in order to successfully hold all those roles. And so I might as well test myself on those skills ahead of time, when my platform is small, when nobody is watching, when people can point out my flaws and my mistakes, and I can go, yeah, you're right, small audience, let's fix it. And even where I can use those tests, because I don't have because I don't have that large platform, it doesn't seem like such a big risk for me to try different stuff.
Yeah, that's great. That's really well put.
So we're just about at the top of the hour. It's been a really fast conversation and always full of great connections. Thank you so much for being here with us, Dorie. To close out the conversation, Dorie, why don't you remind the audience where they can find you online and find the book?
Great, thanks, Debbie. So yes, my website, where, as I mentioned, there's 400 free articles that folks can check out. It's dorieclark.com, DORIECLARK. That's also where you can download your free 42-page standout workbook right off the homepage there. And if folks would like to connect on Twitter, I'm at Dorie Clark. And book number 1, Reinventing You. Book number 2, Standout. You can get them on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or lots of other good places as well.
Congratulations on the book. It's always nice to speak to you and to talk to you. Vicki, can you let us know where people can find you?
Sure. I'm in the process of rebranding my website. It's at thehangoutcoach.com. And I have yet to start my email list, so that's why I didn't really have a whole lot of comments on that. It's like, oh, do I even want to admit that? So just getting started on that. I'm also on Facebook. People can find me on Facebook, Vicki Wilson Connelly. I'd love to connect with people if anyone's interested in learning the basics of Hangouts. You know, I just know this much more than the basics, I think. So, and then if anyone wants to learn more, I would definitely refer them to Debbie.
Vicki's a fantastic coach, so if you're looking for the basics of Hangouts, I would absolutely direct you over to her. Thank you for joining us today. And Molly, thank you so much for everything and your help. Please let people know where they can find you and really what your focus is or your expertise.
Sure. I am on all the social networks, Google+, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Or you can just go to Google and type Molly Youngblood Geiger. I pop up all over the place. You can also find me on my website, which is designright4u.com. Primarily, my areas cover SEO, website design, development, graphic design, and digital marketing.
Fantastic. Thank you for all your help with this show, and we're looking forward to many more episodes. And thank you, everybody in the audience, for joining us today. I know that we had some live viewers. We did very little pre-advance promotion. There's going to be a lot more coming up later. But thank you for joining us and for taking the time to contribute to the conversation, and your thoughts and your comments are always appreciated. And you can find me if you're interested in talking about my social media history or my ideas on thought leadership. I can't say that I'm, any big deal, but I have some experiences and I'm always happy to share. And I'm also, I've been spending the last 4 months really diving into another Google tool, which is Google Pay-Per-Click and Google AdWords, and working with a company called Breeze Max Web. And so they are officially a sponsor of So Good for Biz, at least for this very first episode. So I'm really happy to share that. Anyone can find me at my agency website at thesparkleagency.com. And anyone who has any comments, put it on the Facebook page or on the Google Plus page or anywhere on the YouTube, and we'll be happy to see you in a future show. Thanks for joining us, everybody.